We are just over 1 week away from NFL football. And I'm not talking about that preseason crap. I'm talking about regular season football, baby. But with roster cutdowns this week, there may have been some fantasy players impacted by guys left on rosters, going to IR, or just cut altogether. Yo, what is going on, Headliner Nation? Today's show is going to be recapping some news from the past week that is fantasy relevant to some players that we've been talking about this offseason. And for some of them, it's good news, and for some of them, it's bad news. But what risers and what fallers are going to be most impacted by the news over the past week? First up is going to be a fantasy stud that everybody has been targeting, Josh Jacobs. And Josh Jacobs himself is fine, but AJ Dillon was announced as going to the season-ending IR on cutdown day. His Packer career unfortunately looks to be over. And while Marshawn Lloyd is going to get some looks this season, he has basically missed all of training camp with a hamstring injury. And now he's slowly going to be worked back in. Now he did escape the PUP and the IR, so he's not going to miss the first 4 games of the regular season. But a rookie running back that basically misses all of training camp with a hamstring injury doesn't come in and get a lot of touches week 1. Josh Jacobs could absolutely feast over the first few weeks of the season. That doesn't mean that we shouldn't be jumping him super high in our rankings, but it definitely means that if you've been drafting him, you can avoid some huge upside in a really safe floor to start the year. Out of Broncos training camp, it looks like they're going to be exploring some trades to move on from Tim Patrick and running back Samaje Perine. Tim Patrick is a little bit of a shock. He's a veteran favorite in the locker room, and I really feel like they still could have used that presence with Bo Nix. But Samaje Perine isn't catching anybody off guard. I mentioned in a video several weeks ago that likely Denver was not going to keep him on the roster. From a fantasy perspective, that does help clarify a few things, but it also leaves several questions that we're still going to have to answer. Jaleel McLaughlin, Javonte Williams, Audric Estime. Which one of these guys, or all 3 of them, will be getting touches in the backfield for Denver? One thing that we definitely can do is try to answer some questions about Audric Estime, because I feel like he's going to be the key to the situation here. And depending on how many touches he gets, would open up either opportunities or take away opportunities from Williams and McLaughlin. All right, let's discuss the Denver Broncos backfield more in depth. And I want to do a little film review on Audric Estime here. Let's take a look at his preseason opportunities. Is he really a guy that the Denver Broncos think can become a 3-down back? Moving on from Samaje Perine really wasn't that big of a shock. But what happens with the backfield now is really the biggest question. Is it going to be Javonte Williams being a 3-down type of back? Will it end up being Jaleel McLaughlin getting some 3rd down work, being utilized in the passing game, and getting a few touches on the ground? Audric Estime is really going to be the key, because if Denver feels like he is a 3-down back, he could start to take more and more touches away, and by the end of the season, he may be the guy that we should invest in. Now, when I did my pre-draft scouting of Audric Estime, one thing was clear. He was a bruising running back. He was going to run guys over. He was going to pick up some yards and break tackles, but he lacked some key components. He didn't have the burst or the acceleration or even the top end speed that a lot of high end running backs at the NFL level have, especially 3-down running backs. So what does the film tell us right now? Well, here on the first play, it really showcases that. You're going to see Estime get a pretty big hole on the left side of the line here. Unfortunately, he doesn't do nearly as much with it as we would like. That's a big gap. Right now, his eyes are still focused right here behind his tight end. Really, he needs to be focusing on this lane here. Now, that could be maybe he just didn't have enough patience to let that hole open up all the way. Or maybe he just, unfortunately, didn't run with it where he needed to go. But he gets up into this hole here, jumps over this tackle, and he gets hit by the middle linebacker and the cornerback coming in from the side here to make that tackle. Really, Estime is a 3-down running back, needs to be able to find that hole with burst and acceleration. up the field this way to pick up maybe an extra 4 or 5 yards. He just doesn't have that here. We're going to be taking a look at another prime example of some of that burst and acceleration that's missing. He gets the pitch here off to the outside. Now, this block here, I'll give him that. That block kind of gets blown up, and it really defeats this outside lane here. This ends up getting closed off here. The cornerback is able to get outside here past the tight end, closing off this seam. So he's got to try and cut it back in. But he still has a fairly decent shot at this hole right here where he can maybe pick up a couple of yards. He can't get past this guy. He can't accelerate past the lineman here. And even some more explosive running backs at the NFL level, this absolutely not that great of a block, but still be able to get all the way out here and get down the sideline. Estime doesn't have that acceleration. He ends up turning it back up here, right into the tackles, and unfortunately doesn't have that big of a gain once again. This play is extremely concerning for me because one thing that Audric Estime as a bruising running back needs to do is score at the goal line. But if his vision becomes an issue and his acceleration is an issue to find those open holes, more of these plays are going to end up happening, which is going to give more opportunities to Javonte Williams. But this handoff here, he is not able to find the hole. This hole right here, not bad. This guy kind of getting off the block a little bit. This is sealed off decently well here, and he would be one-on-one here with this player. That's fine. I'll take the one-on-one matchup at the goal line. The running back, especially on a player this size, safety or cornerback, is going to win that a majority of the time. But that's not what happens here. See that little dance that he does? See that little back and forth where he does a little stutter step? All that ends up doing is running him right into the back of his guard here. He can't be doing that. He's got a big enough hole there. It's not perfect. The blocks could have been a little bit better, but it wasn't good enough on his part with his vision. Again, he gets the ball here. His eyesight should be right here. It should be nowhere else. If he's even thinking about this hole right here, it makes zero sense. You have a linebacker in it. This linebacker steps up, seals it off. You shouldn't even be considering that as a running back. And he does that stutter step because he's thinking about coming here and then ends up running into the back of his offensive lineman. He's going to have better vision than that. Let's go back to some goal line film here because he kind of does the same thing later in the game as well. He does score a touchdown here, which is great. But once again, he's got to accelerate through the hole when it's there and available to him. Right here is his hole. This is where he needs to be going. If he's not going in here, it's a jump step here, and it's trying to go through these two blockers here. This looks to be the spot right here. But you see that once again, puts the foot in the ground, tries to come back. He needs to make quicker decisions, and he needs to realize that. He decides to pick this hole right here, and he gets absolutely stood up. Now, fortunately enough for him, he's able to keep moving just enough that he's able to fall kind of to the right, and because there's no defensive lineman really in front of these offensive linemen, he's able to fall forward onto the goal line there and score the touchdown. But those stutter steps behind the line of scrimmage cannot continue to happen. He's got to have the vision. Right here, this is my hole. I'm meeting the linebacker one-on-one at the goal line, and I'm going to win that. As a big-time bruising back, you have to be able to do that. You have to be able to win that one-on-one matchup. Trying to jump outside here with a little cut and then come back isn't going to work. Holes are going to seal up. Now, if he had decided to go to the outside and he did a jump cut and went to the outside, that's fine. That's one movement. Or if he decided to hit this hole with no movement whatsoever, that's fine as well. But he doesn't do that. He does the stutter step like he's going to go out here, and then he tries to come back over. That gives this guy here just enough time to try and shed off that block a little bit. If this linebacker can meet him at the hole just a little bit earlier, this linebacker was a little late here. If he can meet him here, that right there is another stop at the goal line. If you really like that film review and you feel like you could utilize that more to become a better fantasy player, then you should consider becoming a member here on YouTube. And for those of you that are current members and have watched my film reviews over the last couple of years, you all know that I have a little bit of a superpower right now. And that's the fact fact that I do a lot of film reviews in season of some of the top players in the NFL, especially guys that get off to a slow start or have bad weeks. And somehow magically, when I do a film review of them, they end up going off the week afterwards. If you're a member and you've seen that happen, make sure you comment down below to let everybody know. #Kyle's a superhero. But I do those in-depth reviews all season long, and they really are a great tool for you to become a better fantasy player and make decisions on some guys that you should maybe sell high or buy low. So become a member today. Hit the blue join button down below. Pick your tier, see what comes with it, become a member today. Every tier here on YouTube, whether it be $5, $10, or $20, gets you access to all of the exclusive videos as a member. The film review studies, everything that we do in season based around my dynamic running back rating, and then of course, weekly flex, kicker, and defensive special teams rankings. We already knew that the Brandon Aiyuk situation in San Francisco was causing some headaches. He's been holding out all offseason waiting for a new contract or to be traded, and neither of those things have happened as of yet. And it does hurt this offense. That deep threat on the outside really opened things for George Kittle, Deebo Samuel, and Christian McCaffrey. And as big of an impact as not having Brandon Aiyuk on the field would make, left tackle Trent Williams apparently is not going to play until he has a new deal. And that makes the situation even worse for the San Francisco 49ers. Now, I'm not saying that we should be skipping on anybody. I still love George Kittle. Christian McCaffrey is still my number one. And more than likely at some point in time, Brandon Aiyuk and Trent Williams will be on the field. Trent Williams, probably for the 49ers. Brandon Aiyuk, who knows at this point. However, I'm not going to give up on any of these guys as of yet, but it is a caution to you out there. Don't load up on the San Francisco 49ers too much. Don't overdraft them. Don't try to pair Deebo or Brandon Aiyuk. I wouldn't be trying to put together Christian McCaffrey and George Kittle. I would want to own a piece of the San Francisco 49ers offense, but I would not want to own the entire thing. Jaylen Warren is looking healthy, and he is actually expected to be back for some type of a role in week 1. Is it a full workload? Maybe not. But being back on the field week 1 is better than missing completely. And it's a really, really good outlook for what he could start doing over the next couple of weeks. At one point in time, it looked like Jaylen Warren could end up missing several weeks to start the year. So for those of you over the last week that have been buying the dip in his ADP because people were worried about it, congratulations. You got Jaylen Warren at a discount. When he's fully healthy, when Najee Harris is fully healthy, this is a true 50-50 backfield. Now, Najee Harris is still going to have a big impact, at least in week 1, if Jaylen Warren isn't 100%. And if Jaylen Warren isn't 100% for a few weeks, Najee Harris will be the guy for sure. But as the season goes on, both of these guys will get plenty of touches. And both of them will be fantasy viable. Najee Harris, a little bit of a safer floor. Jaylen Warren, a little bit more upside. You may have heard me mention in a few recent videos that I definitely was interested in Chuba Hubbard. Jonathan Brooks not playing in the entire preseason was basically announced a few weeks ago. We knew that that was going to happen. But now he is also going on the PUP to start the year. And because of that, he's going to miss the first 4 weeks of the season. David Canales was up front. We're going to work Jonathan Brooks back slowly. He's not going to play in the preseason, but we really didn't know how much time he was going to miss to begin the year. Now we know it's 4 games. That's 4 games of Chuba Hubbard in an improved offense with improved wide receivers. He wasn't all that bad last year. Mostly his fantasy value was based around his volume. But you know what? As a guy that you can draft as like your running back 4 or 5, Chuba Hubbard is a huge discount right now. 4 weeks with Hubbard as the starter is absolutely incredible. And after those 4 weeks, if Jonathan Brooks does come back, he's still going to be worked back slowly. You could get half a season of Chuba Hubbard and potentially just use him as trade bait at some point in time. So if you haven't drafted as of yet, you should be stashing him in the late rounds of your draft. If you already did draft, maybe it's worth reaching out to that owner and seeing if he would take a cheap wide receiver so you could have some depth at the running back position to begin the year. Things are not looking good for Cole Kmet right now. Gerald Everett appears to be the receiving tight end in this offense, and Cole Kmet appears to be regulated to a role with 2 tight ends on the field and seeing more time as a blocker than an actual receiver. And that stinks for anybody investing in Cole Kmet. But we tried to warn you about this for several weeks, that this was something that could end up happening. Cole Kmet has been a big-time playmaker for fantasy owners over the last couple of seasons. But this year, Gerald Everett seems to be the main tight end utilized in passing situations. Now, if you want to blame anyone with that, it's Shane Waldron, who coached Gerald Everett while he was with Seattle and the Los Angeles Rams. He's bringing him into this offense to do a lot of the same concepts that they've run in these offenses before. And if you've invested in Cole Kmet already, you need to be finding a backup plan ASAP. How about finding out that your RB1 is returning punts? Because that's what we found out with Kyren Williams this week, as Sean McVay announced he's going to be the punt returner for the Rams to start the season. Now, who knows if it's for 1 game or 3 games or lasts the entire season. I'm not concerned about Kyren Williams in that aspect. Yes, it leaves him out on the field. Potential injury issues could always pop up. I'm not going to not draft Kyren Williams because of this, though. But what I am going to do is put even more stock in Blake Corum, because if Kyren Williams does go down with an injury, Blake Corum could end up being a huge fantasy asset this season. And if Kyren Williams is in harm's way, Blake Corum becomes that much more valuable. And now if you own Kyren Williams, you really need to be backing him up with Blake Corum. Later in your draft, off the waiver wire, whatever it may be, if you have Kyren Williams, get Blake Corum on your roster right away. Headliner Nation, if you've been watching videos this offseason, you've heard me tell you over and over, Jerome Ford is a key component to drafting this season. Now, if a lot of you are coming back and you remember what I had to say about Jerome Ford last year, you know that I wasn't all on board with him because I felt like he was being overvalued for what he was truly doing. But now he's being undervalued. We knew Nick Chubb was not going to be 100% to start the year. He's going to miss at least the first 4 weeks of the season. People still haven't been investing in Jerome Ford. Now we found out that Cleveland is moving on from D'Onta Foreman as well. Jerome Ford over the first 4 weeks of the season could be a key cog in your 4-0 team to start the year. You either need to go see if he's on free agency and pick him up right now. You need to see if he's available for trade and get him right now, as long as the cost isn't all that expensive. And if you haven't drafted yet and you can still get him as your RB4 or RB5, we're absolutely investing in him. Because even when Nick Chubb comes back, Jerome Ford could still have a place in this offense as a pass catcher and third down player. Headliner Nation, hopefully some of these news and notes from the past week help you get ready to draft your team. Or if you've already drafted, it's helping you construct your team, make some trades, hit the waiver wire, whatever you may need to do. But for me, I need you all to hit the like button, subscribe if you're new here, and turn on the bell notifications. Anytime we drop new content or go live this season, you're not going to want to miss it. And down in the comments below, let me know if there was some news that wasn't included in this video that you want to know more about. No, I don't have any thoughts on Malik Willis being the backup in Green Bay now. If that was your question, I've answered it for you. But Headliner Nation, I'm going to go ahead and call it there. Everybody stay safe, stay healthy, and get ready for some football. And I'll see you on the next episode of the Fantasy Headliners.